And welcome back to another episode of the Rated R Show. Yes, it is episode 170. It is Wednesday, the something month. I think it's still July, so that's why we're not doing anything particularly big and important. But we're going to do a Pretend That It's Comics ShopTalk episode because of Comic-Con. So that means sitting right next to me across the ocean is Drac.
I think you got your expectations mixed up. Normally the expectation for Comic ShopTalk would be that it'd be TJ. He's the expert. I'm just the Joe Schmo off the street.
Yeah, this time we swapped it around, so I'll do the Joe Schmo and you will do the expert.
Oh, this is going to go to a downhill slide fast.
Hey, it's the Rated R Show. Nothing new there.
All right, so shall we jump into it?
Witcher, of all these news you want to talk about?
Oh, aren't we cute? Yeah, so first up, Witcher teaser trailer dropped at Comic-Con. In addition to the interviews that they had with some of the cast, from conversations I've had with you, you don't sound too enthused, but I mean, I'm really liking the way that it looks.
That's all, because I'm specifically not liking what I'm seeing. I don't mean that in it doesn't look like The Witcher, or it doesn't look like I imagined the books would be, etc. Literally just, this is giving me feelings from older, either video game movies or fantasy movies. I got a very bad Dungeons & Dragons movie vibe out of it.
Are you saying this looks like it was done by the Sci-Fi Channel?
I'm saying I might wish it was. Oh, come on, that beefcaking. Ew, that was too much.
Well, to me overall, I've said it before, I'm sure I'll repeat it in the future. It's hard to judge something based solely on a teaser trailer or a couple of images, but what we're seeing thus far to me looks cool. I definitely want to see more. I don't think I've mentioned it on the show, perhaps. I know we've talked about it off air. I'm a little disappointed that they're not going with two swords and they only seem to be going with one, but I think that was probably done for, filming action sequences and stuff like that. If he ends up having to do things like, rolls and things like that during combat, it may be difficult to do that with an additional sword strapped to your back. So, plus the larger audience that may not know The Witcher might, I don't know. That may have been one of those design decisions for the larger audience where it would have been like, oh, we think they're going to be confused if he's wielding two swords instead of one.
Possibly. That's all I have to say. I can see why they would cut it down, but at the same time, it seems like a sad thing to remove because it's not that difficult to equip a person with two swords.
Yeah, I think it's just the whole concept of, using one sword for men and another for monsters is probably, like, if the design decision was done because of, trying to make things, I guess, easier for a larger audience, that'll be disappointing. But if it was because of, problems with filming with regards to action sequences and stuff, I can kind of understand that.
Or they just gave it to somebody and he saw it and said, well, it's just like Dungeons & Dragons and here we have the characters. Start filming.
So, at least with regards to the interviews where they were talking to the cast and the writer, it was kind of interesting because she was talking about how basically the story, or at least for the story for season 1, is going to be based on some of the short stories. So we're not going to be seeing things necessarily out of the game itself or the larger books, but some of the earlier short stories, I guess, is where they're pulling information from to tell the story in season 1. I
can see that actually pleasing some fans, perhaps the more hardcore Polish ones. But still, that might be a good idea.
Well, I think the other thing that's kind of great about that is it allows them to go back and as much as most things do with this kind of thing where they're almost doing like an origin story kind of thing. We'll have to. Well, I don't know. Like I said, we'll see how it turns out. But so far, it's looking interesting. I'm not looking at it as quite as how do you say it? Maybe looking down my nose at it so much as you are.
It's not even looking down. It's really just a vibe getting from looking at it. I'm worried that this won't be good. And again, independently of it being Witcher, this doesn't look like it's going to be good production quality-wise.
Well, time will tell, and I can only hope that you're not right. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
It has happened before. I mean, 1997, I think it was.
Did you see the poster for Zombiland 2?
Only because you put it in here so I could look at it.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of information, but they have shown a poster and a release date for Zombiland 2. So it's Zombiland Double Tap. Be out in theaters, at least in the US, October 18th. I'm assuming that's a worldwide release date, but it may not be.
Genuinely no idea, because when they announced it there at Comic-Con, they don't announce release dates globally. They just say, well, this is US and then nothing else.
Which, in some ways, I understand, but in another ways, it's kind of odd because you get people from all over the world coming to Comic-Con. It's a huge variety of people that come out here for this.
Nope. The material presented is very much US-centric to the point that in the past, it's been very common that we couldn't look at trailers over here.
Well, that's disappointing.
Well, I would say it's American.
Well, shall we continue on to the next topic, and you can tell me whether it continues your disappointment, or are you excited for all the things Star Trek that are coming out of the convention this year?
Ooh, so I'm a little bit all over the place because I don't need more Jar Jar Star Trek, but I like some of the things that they're showing us.
Well, I guess first up would be the Season 3 for Discovery. What are your thoughts on that?
Star Trek Burnham. They shouldn't call it Discovery because now the abbreviation is just STD. They should just go on ahead and call it Star Trek Burnham because that's what it is.
Well, yeah, it obviously focuses around the main character, but you could probably make the argument that most Star Trek shows focus on either a main character or a small set of main characters.
Yeah, but not to this degree. Seasons 1 and 2 have been very much just her, to the point that others have just been completely secondary character. And that's been slightly boring. I'm probably old school. I wanted a little bit more ensemble than what we got.
Yeah, I think it would have been kind of cool to see some stuff about, more from the perspective of Spock, or some of the other things that were going on with him when, Discovery was, off busy doing their thing.
And all we've really seen is that there will be some, what they call Star Trek shorts. And last I looked, they weren't available over here. They're not on Netflix. So, yay. All we know is there will be a Season 3 of Discovery, which has already been confirmed. And there will be these short treks, which is only seemingly available to some. So it's a very much a meh point at this point with Discovery. It's somewhere in the distant future. We don't quite know. I'm assuming the Time Bureau thingy hasn't gone in and stopped them. Precisely what's going on, how it fits into the whole thing is going to be interesting. For that matter, which timeline they're going to end up, we don't even know.
Didn't they go ahead something like 1,000 years or something like that?
Precisely. But that also means they've gone past the inflection point of the Jar Jar movies. So we don't know which one they end up in. It's even past Enterprise went out 800 years. So, and because this takes place after Enterprise, they're well past that.
Yeah, so I guess if you're a Star Trek fan, and especially a Discovery fan, stay tuned to see where that goes. But and you mentioned the shorts too, and my understanding is that one of the last, not animated, but one of the last, what do they call it, short treks is supposed to act as a teaser for the Picard series that's getting started.
Did not see that, but I'm looking forward to the Picard series. It's going to be awesome getting him back. He's getting old though, so it'll be interesting to see just how it'll match up with TNG, but it is, a few decades later. And it's interesting they're saying, someone's saying, oh, Brent Spiner will be back. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but Data, yes. Is it? Okay.
Well, here's the thing. Have you watched the teaser trailer that they released?
I saw B4, but whether they actually have Spiner play him, I can't tell, because a lot of mask. Okay, yeah, and the article said that he'll be back, that, obviously you see in the trailer, you see Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9. Jonathan Frakes is coming back, and Marina Sirtis is coming back also to play Deanna Troi. So you're going to get some of these, well-known characters from the Next Generation series that will be returning for this series. And you're right, it looks great. I can't wait. And yeah, Patrick Stewart is definitely older than he was when we were younger watching the show, but they kind of addressed that in a way that, the show itself is also taking place, these decades later. Oh yeah, it seems that the time gap is about the same, so it makes sense. But here's the fun part. Look at how he looks in the trailer, then go back and look at how they made him look in The Inner Light. He is now older, as far as I can tell, in real life than his character was in Inner Light. But his character in Inner Light looks to be 30 years older. Like, he didn't age anywhere near as much as the makeup department thought he would in TNG. And I noticed the internet is screaming because somebody put clothes on 709.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Well, at least they weren't too creepy about it, but it was fun to just watching people say, "Oh no, what have they done? Oh yes, he finally figured out clothing."
Come on, people! These are characters that exist within this world that evolve over time. Don't stay dressed in the same clothes for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I think people were mostly mocking that it was stupid the way her character was done in Voyager, at least the introduction with that outfit. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing Jonathan Frakes. That will be fun.
I think he's actually going to be behind the camera on most of this, but
he tends to be. He has been behind camera over a lot of things since then.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it looks great. I'm looking forward to it. And talking about aging or keeping folks young and stuff like that. What about the animated stuff? Are we getting? I know there was something about an animated show coming out. Is that going to include any known characters, or are these going to be all new characters?
This seems to be all new characters. Like they're just saying, well, we'll carve out a piece that we can do for ourselves without worrying too much. And one of the things that keep being brought up is that it's the Rick and Morty writers. I've not watched Rick and Morty. No idea if that's good or bad, but everything I've seen on Imgur tells me it's going to be terrible.
Rick and Morty it's in its own way. It's definitely enjoyable to watch. It's funny. That mixed with I have a hard time trying to see how that. I can see the animation style looking at that. That makes sense, but it's going to have to be a different style of writing if you really want it to feel like it fits inside Star Trek. But this still seems like this is almost going to have like a comedic take on it, because what I was reading is it says that basically Star Trek Lower Decks is a show about what happens on the lower decks of the ship. Each episode will be 30 minutes long and focuses on 4 ensign rank officers in a not very important Starfleet ship. And so it's like, okay. It's Star Trek has always there has been some comedy throughout, but for the most part it's always been more of a serious, and when I say serious, I don't mean that there isn't humor or there isn't romance, but it's always been something that feels kind of real in a way that if you accept that it's in the future and that all this technology exists as it is, it's very much been a story about people's lives. So this is something that could just be fun, a little bit of a fun departure from that.
And that's what I kind of expect, that it will be this funny take on something very unimportant, something to absolutely counter the gravitas that Star Trek sort of tries to present itself with.
I wonder if they'll be able to balance that pretty well like the Orville has been doing.
Yeah, the Orville seems to me to accept that it is a spoof or a comedy thing without reveling in it, without going, well, this is what we'll be and we'll do it full on. It tries to be Star Trek, but done wrong, which makes it right now the best Star Trek there is.
I was actually surprised at how serious they are in the Orville during some of the episodes. I expected it to be, nonstop from start to finish, this entire like parody comedy type thing, but they do have plenty of serious moments, with the comedy intermixed in between. So it's been a fun one to watch.
Definitely. The one I think is going to be interesting is the Star Trek Voyager Mirror and Smoke comic. IDW is coming out with another one of their Mirror Universe cartoons. No, not comics. That's the word I was looking for. It starts with a C. They've done TNG. I think they've done a couple of TNGs where they just take something and move it into the Mirror Universe and runs with it for one episode, one book. I want to see what they'll do with it. Good old Captain Janeway going from being a scientist to being some kind of murderous pirate queen.
That could definitely be fun to read.
Yeah, it's others have brought this up. Neelix will be his alternative self. Does that mean he's going to be competent and not freaking annoying?
Couldn't tell you.
So that's it's going to be interesting to see how they take all these characters and flip them around. Because there wasn't that much, it isn't that there was none, but DS9, I think, and DS9 is probably the one that did the most with the Mirror Universe. Enterprise did a little bit as well. I think Voyager's one that didn't really get into it. So I'd like to see it. I want to read this.
Did they give a release date for it?
Might have. I didn't notice it.
All right, and I guess moving off of that into another series, maybe seeing some bit of a resurrection. Watchmen. Did you watch I guess it's more of a teaser trailer for that?
I did. And it was, it's a little bit messy, but then again, Watchmen is messy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I liked it, but it was interesting, the things they brought up and the way they seem to be calling back to the movie. So this is set after the movie and thereby also after the comic.
That was the impression I got, is that this takes place well after the events of the movie and the comic and whatnot. Well, the movie was a direct adaptation of the comic anyway.
The movie was good. I liked it. I know a lot of people didn't, but no, I thought it was actually good.
I thought it was a pretty good adaptation of the comic from what everything I remembered seeing, and as far as just overall with the movie, I think in some ways I felt that maybe the pacing was a little bit slow, but it's not that the pacing of the comic was very fast either. But no, it was interesting and it was neat to watch. So I am curious to see where they go with this. But yeah, I'm not sure if I got a clear idea of the story that they're telling with this, other than it seems to be, obviously, like we mentioned, after the events of the original comic and or movie. And now I guess cops are being targeted by villains, and so some cops are wearing masks and acting as like a vigilante police force. So curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, I think they're going to play with that and the whole potential fascismus of that scenario. So definitely stay tuned, but they're well outside of any existing material as far as I'm aware. That gives them some free reign.
Well, and I guess we'll switch over to the DC portion of Comic-Con news that we were pulling out from some of the shows and stuff that are coming from there. So big update to Big update to Batwoman Season 1. I think that was a little bit of a Freudian hopeful that we might actually get Batman in the Batwoman season or show at some point. Burt Ward is actually going to be showing up during the crossover event, so if his name sounds familiar to you, he played Robin back in the old, 60s TV show? So I'm curious to see what character he's going to play in it as well.
Aren't we already in DC when we said Watchmen?
You're right. I forgot that Watchmen was part of DC. For some reason, I keep thinking Watchmen is either IDW or Dark Horse. I don't know why.
Yeah, I have something similar that's mentally connected to Dark Horse, but Batwoman, that basically means we're back in the Arrowverse.
Correct.
Yeah, I like the callbacks they did. I like the ones Flash did with his father. That was pretty nice.
Oh, yeah, I loved that. Yeah, that in its time, back in, the early 90s when they did that Flash TV show. He was kind of cool in that.
And of course, Mark Hamill and all that stuff. So that they're doing it with Batwoman as well. They're going back and say, well, let's find some of the old characters and bring them forward. Well, not characters, but the actual actors, and bring them forward and give them roles. This is nice. It's a cute way of doing a callback.
Well, and it's funny because in this crossover event, not only are they giving an actor who played a role previously as someone, but who's also in this Arrowverse as another character. Brandon Routh is going to be picking up the cape again and playing Superman in this Infinite Earths crossover. So I'm wondering, are we going to see him on screen as both Superman and the Atom, or is that going to happen separately? It'll be interesting to see how they do that.
Aren't they pretty much sidelining Legends at this point?
I'm not entirely certain. I know that the last crossover event in last season that they sat out on that. In fact, they even made a joke about how they weren't going to participate in the crossover.
So I don't know. No, I hope Legends comes back, but Legends is doing their own thing, and it's been pretty awesome that they've just throwing everything at the wall and having fun with whatever sticks. But as for Batwoman, I am looking forward to that one. It's been ages already. When did it get teased? Is that a year ago? Yeah,
they had her show up during the last crossover event, and then I guess, prepping for the show and getting everything filmed and whatnot. She was, Ruby Rose was actually scheduled to make an appearance at Comic-Con, but then last minute sent a video in place because I guess they were still filming stuff for season 1 of Batwoman, so she wasn't going to be able to make it down. And as far as the story that they're going to be telling through season 1, looks like it will be based on the villain, or at least the villain that you're going to see. The story will be based on the character Hush.
Oh, that explains why isn't Benioff couldn't be there either.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I think they probably decided not to go down just, I don't think they wanted to face a firing squad.
For those don't getting it, the showrunners on HBO's Game of Thrones, very last minute, 24 hours before, also cancelled. And the people who did show up, at least Nikolai Coster-Waldau, has been regretting it, because people quite loudly booed him when he started defending the last season of Game of Thrones. That's a different thing. That's not related to DC, of course, but that was the reference.
Well, and I'll slide back into the DC stuff with Young Justice Season 4 being announced. I know a lot of folks have had mixed reactions to Season 3. I'm excited to see the show back on. I have been enjoying the show thus far. It's had some hits or misses, both with the story and the pacing of it, but so far, overall, I'm glad it's back, and I'm happy to see we're going to get get a 4th season.
Is that the cartoon version?
It is, yep. And it focuses around mostly around the younger characters, like sidekicks and whatnot, that have formed their own teams.
Nice. I've not watched it at all. The only thing I've seen or at all closely related is the thing that was on Netflix.
The thing that was on Netflix. A little more specific?
What's his name? Robin and Starfire and Raven and... Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't on Netflix. That's on the DC streaming service. That was Titans.
Yeah, on Netflix.
Oh, you have it on Netflix over there. Okay.
So I just need to watch the last one.
Oh, yeah, I just knew that it was on the DC streaming service. I didn't realize that it also made to Netflix.
We don't have DC streaming service over here, so Netflix. It's the same with the Star Trek stuff we mentioned earlier. No HBO, it's on Netflix, except for the shorts.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Sort of. Just makes it easier. Just Netflix.
That's true enough, right? Yeah, instead of all the other streaming services, you just deal with the one.
True, because we also have Amazon.
A lot cheaper than, what are we going to end up with, about a dozen? But
And before you go on to the last one of these, since I mentioned Amazon, The Expanse has been confirmed to come out on Amazon, supposedly worldwide. That would be a first. December 13th.
Probably should have put that up with the Star Trek stuff.
Yeah, The Expanse is definitely totally Star Trek. I think we just got 2 angry writers over in the US.
Well, I'm saying it fit more with Star Trek than with superheroes. But yeah, the last thing we had on here for DC was the animated series that is going to be starring Kelly Cuoco from The Big Bang Theory as Harley Quinn in this animated Harley Quinn DC series. So they released a trailer for that. You get a chance to watch that online. It definitely looks Harley Quinn-ish. It's certainly, I mean, I'll definitely check it out. I don't know. The character of Harley Quinn can be kind of a fun one to watch. Whether I guess, you know, with hopefully the amount of comedy that's in this, it'll make it fun to watch.
So more cartoons.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope, nothing wrong at all. Well, they're supposed to do a Harley Quinn movie at some point, or at least some Suicide Squad.
Yes. What is it? The second Suicide Squad, I think, is still being done with James Gunn is the director for that, and I'm trying to remember. I think there was now we're diving back into my memory, which is horrendous, and I can't remember if there was a separate Harley Quinn project or that was the Suicide Squad 2 movie. I think it might be a separate project. I think it had some obnoxiously long title too.
At this point, can't we just call it the first Suicide Squad movie?
Let's pretend the first one didn't exist.
God, that was terrible.
Well, speaking of snapping things in and out of existence, we're going to close this out with all of the MCU Phase 4 news that we got, and boy, was it a lot.
Was there? I didn't see any.
Yeah, right. How many notifications did you have when you woke up?
Some.
So they released the slate of what we're going to see both on the big screen for movies and on streaming services for shows. We're going to be getting Black Widow as the next Marvel movie. Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be, I think, the first TV series that they're going to have in the MCU. Then we get the Eternals, which, again, back to the big screen. Shang-Chi. Then when we go to, let's see, they're calling it WandaVision, which I thought was kind of an interesting title for that with Wanda and the Vision. And then we go Doctor Strange 2, then the Loki show. Then there's going to be an animated series, which they're going to be telling like what if stories, which should be kind of cool. And they've got a very large voice cast lined up for that. Then we're also getting a Hawkeye TV show. And then finally, the last thing that they announced, at least with a date, was Thor 4. And just when you thought all the announcements were over, they bring on the actor that they're going to cast for Blade. So there was just so much stuff.
Okay, so very quickly, Black Widow, that's about bloody time. That should have been done Phase 2, sorry.
Yeah, it is definitely overdue.
Falcon Winter Soldier TV series, that could be corny, but could be good. Some kind of buddy show.
I see that, and I almost want an A-Team type thing.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you. Somewhere A-Team, perhaps MacGyver-ish, style-wise. Yeah, put it into something that is 70-ish and kish.
Well, from my understanding, it's going to take place after the events of Endgame, so more present day. But
style-wise, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, mean, there's a present-day MacGyver, and wasn't there a present-day A-Team movie? So, yeah.
It could be done, and I think it would. I think the style of humor and action would work well for the whole buddy team up thing.
The ones then that can fail are the next ones. Eternals can be great, or it could overshoot and be terrible.
I think a lot of folks probably thought the same way about Guardians of the Galaxy, and that turned out really well. So I think they're hoping to strike gold again with this next team up or grouping, I should say, with the Eternals. And they've brought in Angelina Jolie, and man, it's I'm kind of surprised to see her in the Marvel universe. I don't know why, but I know that they did the casting announcement with her a while back. That wasn't one that I expected, but we're also going to get Kumail Nanjiani. God, I hope I didn't, but I apologize when I butcher some of these names. Salma Hayek is in it as well, which another shock for me, but I think it's great.
So yeah, it could succeed. It could also just fail miserably. This is one of those that, yeah. Next one is Shang-Chi. I can again see this failing just because I don't believe particularly Americans will want to watch it. Sorry.
Oh, dude, I don't know about that. I mean, okay, obviously I'm biased and I love this stuff, so yeah, I want to watch it. But I mean, there are a lot of folks, over here who, love watching martial arts films and stuff like that. So I think that even if you don't get maybe necessarily people in the superhero or even in the Marvel sphere of things that want to watch this, you may get folks who like watching martial arts movies want to watch this.
And that's where it might succeed, because we saw with Daredevil, the Insufferable Iron Fish, basically those that martial arts can work in this scenario, but I just worry Shang-Chi moves it even further away. It becomes difficult for some people to relate to.
Well, this one ought to be ought to be interesting to see how they do this, because they're calling it Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I am guessing because I'm seeing here that they also are going to have the Mandarin, as in the real one, not the fake one that they had before. So this is probably going to be the Makluan rings that the Mandarin would make use of. So and in some ways, I'm curious to see how they portray that, because in some respects, like old school, Mandarin was like magic, and then I think it was updated later in the comics to be some kind of alien technology. But to me, it was always interesting. I always loved the Mandarin being the foil to Iron Man because of the fact that it was this, technology versus magic type, almost like an argument, in which would prevail. So still, I'm glad we're finally going to get the actual Mandarin, because Ben Kingsley is a great actor, but I just was so frustrated when he was just there as a charlatan. It was so annoying.
I always hoped they would wrap that up and we would get something following that would show the Mandarin. So,
well, we got a hint, and I'm still actually hoping that we see Ben Kingsley say, meet the man that he was impersonating. There was a Marvel one-shot that came out where he gets broken out of prison, and it looks like it's by like true followers of the Mandarin. So it'll be curious. It'll be kind of neat to see, actually, hopefully, that they bring him in on this, and he has to face off, or well, I wouldn't even really say face off, but what kind of punishment he gets doled out from the Mandarin.
But yeah, moving on, WandaVision I think could be interesting. A little, day in the life of Wanda and Vision.
The curious thing about this one is they said that this is also going to take place after Endgame. So, Vision died in Infinity War. And
spoilers.
Oh, come on. Infinity War is over a year old.
Yeah, spoilers.
That goes out the window after the first couple weeks or even the month with a big movie like that.
If you start spoilering Endgame, I'm coming over there and punching you. It's still 2 weeks, 3 weeks, August 13th, until I can watch it.
Wait a minute. So you're threatening me with a trip to come see me? I don't know. You're giving me incentive to do this.
Oh no, I'm just letting you see my fist.
But yeah, no, it'll be curious to see how Vision, you can't say spoilers now because you already heard it, but how Vision is brought back, because at least in the comics, Wanda's powers were that she had the ability to modify or change reality. So now I'm wondering if we're going to get that aspect, if they're going to delve a little deeper into her powers and she's going to, change reality and bring Vision back or something like that.
I just want to see Vision run around with a little maid uniform and play house.
Oh, I was waiting for you to say something like about it, him in the sweater vest or whatever.
Nah, it'll be her in the sweater vest. He'll be playing wife.
Well, and so one of the things that they did talk about in that panel too, though, was that I guess this is going to tie in with the next Doctor Strange movie. So the title for the next Doctor Strange movie is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm kind of wondering, are we going to get Wanda and the Vision from the timeline or the universe that we know, or is this going to be Wanda and the Vision from a different part of the multiverse?
No idea, but the idea of Doctor Strange and Wanda in a horror movie, that could work. As long as they're the horrors, of course. No, I think this is going to be interesting. A horror-style movie with Doctor Strange. Yes, that could possibly work if done right.
And this one, the Doctor Strange movie, will take place several years after Endgame and the Spider-Man movie that just came out. So there's not a lot of information yet, but as G mentioned, it is set to be a gothic-type horror movie, and what they're calling the first scary MCU film. So that'll be kind of cool.
And then there's Loki.
You know, I'm sure some people out there are going to be very disappointed here. And I like Tom Hiddleston as Loki. I'm just going to have to wait and see this, because I think in some ways, I think it's cool that they're doing it, but it's not something that I'm super excited about. It's just another one of those things that they have where I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll watch it. I'll check it out.
See, I've been trying to get you to read a comic of mine from for some time now, but a Danish one set in Norse mythology. So based on Norse mythology, complete unrelated to the MCU, etc. But there is, of course, Thor and Loki in there. Check out that Loki. I will watch a TV show about him.
Well, you should tell the folks at home who are listening to this which comic you're talking about.
Well, that's the thing. I have no idea what they're called in English.
And yet you want me to try and read it.
I've gotten you a copy. Go read it. It's just the first one. It's the old story of where Thor dresses up in a dress to sneak into the home of, what are they, the giants, and which is based on a 1,000-year-old story, but it's updated, and it's kind of good.
Well, as far as the story for this particular Loki series show that'll be coming out, it looks like it's going to take place after the events of Endgame, and since G doesn't want me to spoil that part, we'll say that Loki does a very Loki thing and makes a very Loki exit, and this is what happens after that.
He makes a Loki exit?
A Loki-styled exit, yeah.
Well, I'll look forward to it. I'll look forward to Endgame at least, and then see what this becomes. The next one, What If, is going to be interesting, because that's a range of comics. So what if they change the little thing?
Yeah, and the star lineup I was seeing for this was pretty crazy, too. And it's going to be all animated, so of course it's just going to be, the folks that they're bringing in to do voice acting. But, this is basically just going to be different versions of the Marvel characters throughout the multiverse, and, what if things were done differently.
Don't have anything to add. That's going to be interesting. They have a lot of comics to base it on. There's some nice material, but also free hands to pretty much go what if whatever.
And then I guess I would say another surprise from the show was that they announced a Hawkeye TV series that'll be on the streaming service, and it looks like this is going to focus around not just Hawkeye but also a junior Hawkeye. The character was Catherine, or otherwise known as Kate Bishop, and she was also a member of the Young Avengers. She takes up the mantle of Hawkeye when he basically leaves it behind for a while, and as you'll know from various comics and stuff, him picking up the identity of Ronin and whatnot, he eventually does come back to the role of Hawkeye, but she doesn't give it up. So there's like two Hawkeyes in the Marvel Comics universe there, and there are some folks that are theorizing that we might be getting like the scene that was, man, this is so difficult too, because this isn't anything that's really spoilery, because it happens in like the first, 5 minutes of the movie. You see they start off with Hawkeye and he's training his daughter, and so because of that scene, there were folks that were theorizing that we may get this younger female version of Hawkeye in the MCU at some point. Now the only question is are they going to change things, and is it going to be his daughter, or is it going to be this Kate Bishop character?
So you're telling me it's not just going to be a Hawkeye playing house?
Doesn't sound like it, no. And I think they even said in the panel there that it's that Kate Bishop is that they're going to introduce that character, but my question is, are they going to introduce that as, say, an identity thing for his daughter to protect her actual actual identity in the rest of the family, or is this going to actually be a separate character? I don't really think it's going to be his daughter, but I know there were some folks that were theorizing that it might end up being his daughter.
So it's somebody with a bow and arrow who disappears, and then somebody else with a bow and arrow shows up and takes over that character, that role, and name, and more or less looks. And they're going to make a TV show out of that. Isn't that the Arrow Season 8?
I was wondering if you were going to swing back to the Arrow.
This sounds just like Season 8.
Look, if you look back through history of comics, both DC and Marvel, and even some other ones, the other companies and stuff that have sprung up since then, there are oftentimes similarities between characters. You get people drawing similarities between Green Arrow and Hawkeye, or Batman and Moon Knight, Superman and Captain Marvel, and it's just like all these different characters that share, in some ways, either similar aspects, similar character development, or similar stories. Batman and Iron Man were another comparison too. It's easy to make that joke.
And it's not even accidental. There are several of them. I think TJ could elaborate more on this, that are literally rip-offs of each other, or the same character presented to both, and then one bought it and the other one just made a rip-off.
Yeah, and in some ways you could say the same thing about Harley Quinn and Deadpool, which Deadpool is kind of a rip-off of Slade Wilson, so it's just like Marvel ripping off DC and DC ripping off Marvel's rip-off of DC. It's what was that phrase you taught me not too long ago? It's turtles all the way down.
Yeah, it's turtles all the way down.
So, and then one of the cool things that they showed on stage is they brought out the director from the last Thor movie, Thor Ragnarok. And then, of course, Chris Hemsworth was there, and a surprise to me is we get Natalie Portman on stage, and she's going to be in the next Thor movie. Why is she going to be in the next Thor movie? Because they're going to run the story from the comics where Jane Foster picks up the hammer. So that's going to be kind of cool. We're going to get to see how they tell that in the MCU now.
Can I say just now, and by the way, it's called Thor 4 Love and Thunder. I think that's an interesting title they took for it. When the comic came out, people whined and bitched. When this comes out, gets close to release, people whine and bitch. As somebody who grew up in Scandinavia with Norse mythology, with family members even going so far as converting to the old religion, I am fully on board with a female Thor. Absolutely. Go for it. There is nothing wrong with it. I think it's nice to see somebody picking up that mantle. And if it's, Natalie Portman, all the power to her character.
Well, in the comics, it was an interesting story where Jane Foster has cancer. And every time she would pick up the hammer, and at least they played coy with the comic series for a while as to who was the female Thor. Like, nobody knew who the female Thor was, because she always wore the helmet, and which would partially cover her face. But the other interesting part of that was every time she picks up the hammer, it advances the cancer throughout her body. So every time she's doing these heroic things, she's killing herself doing it. I'm curious to see if they're going to play with that, if that storyline is going to make its way through. I'm also curious to see exactly when this takes place in the MCU, if it's going to be like Doctor Strange and years later, or if it's going to happen at a different time. But the only problem I've ever had with either the comic or the movie is Thor is his name. It's not like a job title. Like, his title is the god, or if you want to go gender neutral, the deity of thunder. So yes, she would be the goddess or the deity of thunder still, but his name is Thor. So that was the only thing that I had a problem with. I thought she should have, either, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't the feminine version of the name be Thora?
Yeah, but if you take Old Norse, then you're walking into some grammatic issues there.
Okay. Yeah, that was the only issue I ever had. It doesn't bother me that a woman picks up the hammer. And in fact, I think that the story that they told with it was actually like a really heartfelt and really cool story. But it was just that they were calling her Thor, or the female Thor, and it's like, why does she have to be the female Thor? Like, I don't know. It still made me feel in some ways, even though that the story they were telling was really good, it's almost still, I don't know. Some people may disagree with me. We'll see.
But naming wise, you're right, because we have Thura and Thura too. In English you call them Tyr, and you have Frey and Freya. So yeah, arguably it would be Thora, but it's just, it recalls some grammatic possessive form in Old Norse. It gets weird. And give it another name. It is weird. At least James Bond, 007, they're giving her 007, but not the James Bond moniker. So.
Well, and see, that's a perfect example, actually, there, and I'm glad you brought that up, too, because, you still have, just like in the James Bond movie, in this one, Thor is still there. He's still Thor. So it's weird for somebody else to be called Thor, because it almost gives this vibe of a little bit of an imposter. But she's a separate person. It's Jane, but she's the deity or the goddess of thunder in this case. But yeah, the whole James Bond thing, those 00 numbers are their job titles in essence. So
they're licenses.
Yeah, and we've seen how many 006s or 008s, throughout the years. So for somebody else, for James to step back and retire and somebody else to become the next 007 makes perfect sense. Although...
Yeah, but with the latest, what's his face? Daniel? The guy who plays 007, the current one.
Yeah, Daniel Craig.
Yeah, there was established that the name is passed on. It was a bit weird, because in the past, all the other ones have actually just been the same person, just with different actors, but with him it was defined that, nope, it's the name passed on to a new person, not just the license to kill.
I don't know, you know what? I'll have to go back and rewatch the Daniel Craig Bond movies then, because I forgot all about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I watched the first one and then gave up.
Well, don't give up on the Marvel news just yet, because just when you thought everything was over, they bring out the actor that they've picked to play Blade, and they're even saying that's I'm not clear on whether or not that's going to be part of Phase 4, because the graphic that they had ended with Thor 4. So whether or not Blade and some of the other things that we've been waiting for are going to have be part of Phase 4 or part of another phase, that remains to be seen, and mostly because of the fact that it seems like Marvel is kind of they define the phases in their own way as far as what movies bookend the phases. But Mahershala Ali has been picked to become Blade in the next MCU movie after Thor 4. And if his name sounds familiar, if you see pictures of him on social media, you might recognize him as Cottonmouth from the Luke Cage Marvel series on Netflix. And I gotta say, I know there may be some folks that might be disappointed that they're not bringing Wesley Snipes back, but if somebody was going to play the role besides Wesley Snipes, I think they've picked a good person to do it. I can definitely see him as Blade.
So that got weird. Less than a week ago, I was watching something with him and was fully thinking, do you know what? They could use Mahershala Ali as Blade. Now comes up, wait, what? I don't know if there might have been a rumor that I had seen, and therefore that put the thought in my brain. It's just looking at him sitting, I think it was an interview, late night show thing. It's just that could work. Okay, and it is. But I would be surprised, considering how many people die in the universe of Blade, similar with Deadpool. I would be impressed if they put that into the MCU, because there's no way superheroes will just go, oh yeah, over there's a bunch of vampires slaughtering each other. We're just going to ignore them. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I think it depends on how they tell the story too. Plus, with them opening up the multiverse, who knows? Maybe this exists in a multiverse without so many of these superheroes, coming into their power or showing up on Earth or whatnot. And maybe this is just one of those multiverses where Blade exists with the vampires and stuff like that. Who knows?
Don't know. Blade was fun. I actually liked the last Blade. It'd be interesting to see what they do now.
Yeah, well, and plus, typically is a lot of times with vampire stories, they're trying to keep their identities, or the fact that they are vampires hidden from the rest of the world so that humans don't hunt them. And especially if they're superpowered, humans and mutants and whatnot, there would be even more reason for them to keep the fact that they are, feeding on people a secret. So yeah, we'll have to see how that story turns out. But I mean, we're probably a few years from that at this point.
Then on to things that wasn't really mentioned as part of Phase 4, but definitely part of the MCU, Black Panther.
Yeah, if you were sitting here looking at all the stuff that we talked about, and one of the things that pops into mind is, oh, well, it's great that we're getting all these, in some cases, new things, or that we're actually getting a fourth Thor movie, but wait a minute, what about Black Panther 2? What about Captain Marvel 2? What about the rumors with Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and what happened to Guardians of the Galaxy 3? All this stuff was not specifically released as far as any dates that we're going to get, but Kevin Feige did say that this stuff is being worked on. I'm seeing, you linked me an article from MovieWeb that said that it's part of Phase 4, but again, depending on how they define Phase 4, this could be part of Phase 4 or this could be part of Phase 5. It wasn't shown on the slide in Hall H as to be, considered part of Phase 4, at least not in the stuff they're talking about yet. Yeah,
it's just, there's no way these are not going to be in the MCU, so it might be Phase 5, who knows. But everybody's known that there will be a Black Panther 2 because Black Panther. They have to.
Yeah, and folks will make the same argument for Captain Marvel too. It's like there's no way they weren't going to do a second Captain Marvel movie. So be curious to see what stories they tell with these things. I'm also really interested to see how they're going to introduce the Fantastic Four into the MCU with, so many other things already having happened in the MCU and what other characters we might get to see cameo in these movies. I gotta say, man, I could definitely see like Blade showing up as like an end credit scene in or Doctor Strange 2. That would be interesting.
Was it the last of the Iron Fish episode? One of the last ones where they actually made a call out to Fantastic Four.
If you're relying on my memory, I got some bad news for you, dude. I can't remember.
The last season of Iron Fish, he's trapped in a building owned by what's-his-face, and he calls for an ambulance, and the address is on the same road as the Fantastic Four building.
Oh, that may have been, yeah.
It's a weird little call-out, but it was interesting they did it.
So I know we are coming up on the hour. Those are all the comic-related things, I guess, and some non-comic-related things, but all of the things that we found super interesting with regards to TV shows and movies and whatnot coming out of the Comic-Con. But you didn't get TJ this time around because he's been busy doing stuff. He's been working around the convention center area. His job keeps him busy this time of year with different convention schedules. So we will endeavor to be back in August with another Comic Shop Talk. Hope that you guys have enjoyed the news we brought. And if you hadn't seen some of this stuff, definitely it's worth going and checking out some of those trailers. But as always, we appreciate a like, subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave those for us. And I guess until next time, this is Drac, and I'm out.
Ciao.